I slammed the door shut behind me, the iron key scraping in the lock like a confession I wasn't ready to hear. The room smelled of dust and something sweeter, like wilted roses left too long in a vase. My hands trembled as I lit the lantern, its flame flickering over walls papered in faded yellow. The kind Ma had chosen years ago to mimic the fields outside Ashfield Ranch. But this wasn't any room. It was the one we'd all whispered about, the locked one at the end of the hall where Pa said the angel child slept. I was Elias Ashfield, 19 and already feeling the weight of the land like a yoke on my shoulders. Pa had gone west 2 years back, chasing gold in the Black Hills, leaving me to tend the cattle and keep the family from splintering. Ma, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, had taken to locking herself away more each day, muttering about blessings and curses. And then there was little Sarah, my sister, 10 years old and frail as a reed, who spent her afternoons staring at that door as if it might open on its own. The key had been in Ma's apron pocket when she collapsed in the kitchen that morning, her face pale as the snowdrifts outside. Doc Harlan said it was her heart, worn thin from years of toil and secrets. As I held her hand cold and still, the key slipped out, clinking against the floorboards. No one else was home. Sarah was out with the neighbor boy, and our hired hand, old Tom, was mending fences miles away. It felt like fate, or maybe just the devil's nudge, urging me to finally see what we'd all pretended wasn't there. I stepped deeper into the room, the floorboards creaking under my boots. A child's bed sat in the corner, carved with delicate wings along the headboard. Pa's handiwork, no doubt, from before he left. The blankets were neatly tucked as if someone had just stepped out for a moment. On the nightstand, a porcelain doll stared up at me with glass eyes, its dress yellowed but pristine. I picked it up, feeling the chill of it, and that's when I heard it. A soft rustle from behind the wardrobe. My heart pounded like a hammer on an anvil. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking despite myself. No answer, just the wind rattling the window pane. I set the doll down and edged toward the wardrobe, its dark wood scarred from years of disuse. With a grunt, I pulled it open, revealing shelves of folded linens and, tucked behind them, a small trunk, latched but not locked. My fingers fumbled with the clasp, and inside lay a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, the top one addressed to Pa in Ma's looping script. I unfolded it, the paper brittle under my touch. "Dearest Elias will understand one day," it began. "The angel came to us in the storm of 82, not born of woman but sent from above. We've kept her safe, but the whispers grow. If I am gone, tell no one." The words blurred as my eyes stung. Not born of woman. What madness was this? Sarah was the only child left after the fever took the others, unless... A floorboard groaned again, closer this time, from the bed. I whipped around, lantern swinging, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. The blankets shifted just a fraction, and a small hand, pale, almost translucent, poked out from beneath. "Elias?" came a whisper, thin as spider silk. It was Sarah's voice, but she wasn't supposed to be here. I dropped the letter, rushing forward, pulling back the covers to find her curled up, eyes wide and fever bright. "What in God's name are you doing in here, Sarah? This room's off limits." I scooped her up, her body light as a bird's, but she clung to me, whispering, "The angel's cold. Eli, she needs us." I carried her out, locking the door behind us with shaking hands, the key burning in my palm. Downstairs, I settled her by the fire, wrapping her in a quilt. Her cheeks flushed, but her gaze kept drifting back toward the hall. "Ma said not to tell," she murmured, "but the angel cries at night. She's lonely without you all." I knelt beside her, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Sarah, there's no angel. Just stories to keep us from poking around." But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. Ma's letter, the hand from the bed, it didn't add up. The ranch was isolated, snow piling high against the Dakota plains, cutting us off from town until spring. If there was something or someone in that room, we were on our own to face it. As night fell, the house settled into uneasy quiet, broken only by the howl of wind through the eaves. I sat vigil by Sarah, watching her drift into fitful sleep, while questions churned in my mind. What had Ma hidden? And why did it feel like the walls themselves were listening? Tomorrow I'd search again, but for now the locked door loomed in my thoughts, a shadow promising revelations I might regret. The key turned in the lock with a rasp that echoed down the hallway like a warning. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob, heart pounding against my ribs as if it knew what lay beyond before I did. Pa's voice had been firm that morning over breakfast. "Elias, you stay clear of that room today." but the curiosity burned hotter than the Dakota sun baking the sod roof overhead. I was 12, old enough to question why Ma's eyes darted away whenever the angel child came up in whispers from the neighbors. Pushing the door open just a crack, I peered into the dimness. Dust motes swirled in the sliver of light from the hallway lantern, and the air hung heavy like the inside of a forgotten trunk. The room wasn't much. 4 walls of rough-hewn pine, a single window boarded over with planks nailed tight. But in the corner, on a pallet of straw and quilts, something stirred. Not a child, not like my little sister Clara with her freckles and braids. This was smaller, paler, its limbs twisted like roots unearthed too soon. It turned its head toward me, eyes wide and milky, and let out a sound that wasn't a cry but a hum, low and vibrating through the floorboards. I slammed the door shut, the key slipping from my fingers to clatter on the floor. My breath came in gasps, and I pressed my back against the wall, sliding down until my knees hit the dirt-packed ground. What had Pa meant by angel? Angels didn't hide in locked rooms. They didn't make your skin crawl with that unnatural warmth seeping under the door. Footsteps thudded from the kitchen, Ma probably stirring the noon stew, and I scrambled up, snatching the key and shoving it back into the lock. Twice turned, just like always, but now the secret felt alive, pressing against the wood like it wanted out. Downstairs, the ranch hands were shouting about a busted fence line, the cattle scattering toward the Badlands after last night's storm. Pa would be out there soon, his weathered hands mending what the wind tore down, but I couldn't shake the image of those eyes. Clara tugged at my sleeve as I stumbled into the yard, her voice piping up. "Elias, you look like you've seen a ghost. Want to help me feed the chickens?" She was 8, all bounce and no shadows. The kind of brave that came easy when you didn't know better. I nodded, forcing a grin, but my mind raced. The angel child, our brother, they said once in a hushed argument I'd overheard, was born wrong, marked by some frontier curse or God's jest. Pa kept him locked away to protect him from the townfolk who whispered of witches and changelings. But protection for who? The boy or us? As I scattered feed for the hens, their clucks a frantic rhythm, I glanced back at the house. The locked door upstairs loomed in my thoughts, a challenge I hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. If the storm had loosened the boards, maybe more than cattle would wander free today. The lantern's flame flickered as I edged closer to the door, my fingers tracing the rusted hinges like they held some secret code. Pa had always said the room was off limits, but after what I'd seen in the barn that morning, the bloodied rags and Ma's whispered prayers, I couldn't shake the feeling that the angel child wasn't just a story to scare us kids. Elias, my younger brother, tugged at my sleeve, his eyes wide in the dim hallway. What if it's real, Jem? What if it's watching us? I shushed him quick, heart pounding against my ribs. The house creaked under the prairie wind, but inside the silence was thicker, like the air itself was holding its breath. We'd snuck up here after supper when Pa was out mending the fence and Ma was lost in her sewing, muttering about sins and saviors. Elias was the brave one, or so he thought, but his grip on my arm betrayed him. "We gotta know," he whispered, echoing my own thoughts. The lock was old, a simple iron thing, but it mocked us with its weight. Prying it open took both of us, me wedging my knife under the latch while Elias held the light steady. A sharp snap echoed, too loud in the quiet, and the door groaned inward on protesting hinges. Dust motes danced in the beam, swirling like ghosts disturbed from slumber. The room was small, barely larger than our sleeping quarters downstairs, with walls papered in faded yellow, peeling at the corners. A single bed sat in the center, its frame carved with crude wings like someone had tried to make it heavenly. No one was there, just a quilt neatly folded and a cradle rocked gently by some draft I couldn't feel. But the smell, sweet and sour like milk gone bad, hit me then, turning my stomach. Elias stepped in first, bolder now, and lifted the corner of the quilt. Underneath lay a doll, porcelain face cracked, one eye missing, dressed in a tiny white gown stained yellow with age. "This ain't no angel," he said, voice cracking. "It's just junk." I wasn't so sure. On the bedside table, a journal lay open, Ma's handwriting spilling across the pages in frantic loops. I snatched it up, flipping to the latest entry, dated just yesterday. "The child stirs again. Whispers in the night. We must keep it hidden, for the town's eyes are turning." My blood ran cold. What child? We'd never had a sibling. Not since the fever took little Sarah years back. Elias peered over my shoulder, his breath hot on my neck. "Ma's gone mad, Jem. Or Pa's lying." A floorboard groaned downstairs. Footsteps heavy and deliberate. Pa was back early. We froze, the journal trembling in my hands. If he found us here, it'd be the strap for sure, or worse, questions we couldn't answer. I shoved the book back, but as I did, something glinted under the bed. A silver locket, chain tangled in the floorboards. I knelt, snatching it up, the metal warm against my palm like it had been held recently. Inside, a lock of hair, golden and fine, curled around a faded photograph. Not Ma or Pa, but a girl, maybe 10, with eyes too bright, too knowing. And scrawled on the back, "Our Angel, 1887. Elias yanked my arm. "We gotta go now." But as we bolted for the door, a soft rustle came from the cradle, like fabric shifting. I glanced back, swearing I saw a shadow move, small and pale, before the lantern sputtered out, plunging us into black. I gripped the rusted key tighter, my knuckles whitening as the lock resisted my twist. The door to the attic had always been there, a scarred oak slab at the end of the narrow hallway. But tonight, with the wind howling like a pack of wolves outside our Dakota farmhouse, it felt alive, pulsing against my palm. Pa had forbidden us from touching it since Ma's accident last harvest, muttering about the Lord's delicate work inside. But Elias, my younger brother, had overheard the whispers from the neighbors. The Ashfields weren't right in the head, keeping something unnatural up there. Elias tugged at my sleeve, his eyes wide in the lantern's flicker. "Come on, Jed, you said we'd look. What if it's treasure? Or one of Pa's old guns?" He was the bold one, all freckles and fire, always dragging me into scrapes while I, the cautious elder at 16, weighed every step like it might crack the frozen earth beneath us. The key finally gave with a groan and the door swung inward on protesting hinges. Dust motes danced in the light, revealing stairs cloaked in shadow, leading up to a room no bigger than our root cellar. I hesitated, the air thick with a sweet, cloying scent, like wildflowers left too long in a vase. "This is folly, Eli, if Pa finds out—" But he was already climbing, his boots thudding softly. I followed, heart pounding, the lantern casting long fingers across cobwebbed beams. At the top, the room unfolded, a single bed draped in faded white linens, a cradle rocking gently, though no breeze stirred the air. And in the corner, a locked cabinet, its glass front etched with faint scratches like tiny hands clawing from within. Elias froze, pointing. There on the bed lay the shape, a small figure bundled in shawls, unmoving. "Is that the angel child?" His voice cracked, bravery fleeing like a startled deer. I stepped closer, bile rising. It wasn't a child, not truly. Pale skin stretched too tight over delicate bones, eyes like polished marble staring blankly at the ceiling, and wings, feathered stubs protruding from the back, withered and gray. The stories flooded back, how the Ashfields had found it in the prairie storm of '89, claiming it a gift from heaven, locking it away to protect it from the world. But this was no angel. It was a mockery, a fragile thing that breathed shallowly, chest rising in fits. A floorboard creaked below. Pa's voice boomed up the stairs. "Boys, what's that racket?" Panic surged. Elias bolted for the door, but I lingered, drawn to the cabinet. Through the glass, something glinted, a journal, yellowed pages spilling secrets. My hand fumbled for the latch, but it held fast, sealed with the same iron will as the room itself. We tumbled down just as Pa's lantern light hit the hallway. His face, weathered like old leather, twisted in fury. "What have you done?" He shoved us aside, slamming the door shut and turning the key with hands that shook not from anger but fear. That night, as snow battered the windows, I lay awake, the image burned in. Those marble eyes pleading without sight. Elias whispered from his bunk. "We gotta tell someone, Jed. It's not right keeping it like that." I nodded in the dark, resolve hardening. Come dawn, we'd slip out to the sheriff in town. But as sleep finally claimed me, a soft flutter echoed from above like wings testing the air, trapped and yearning. I gripped the lantern tighter, its flame flickering against the warped floorboards as Elias's boots echoed down the hall. The house creaked like it was breathing, each groan a reminder that we'd pushed too far already. My sister Clara had always been the bold one, but tonight her eyes darted like a cornered fox's, and I couldn't blame her. The key to that upstairs room hung heavy in my palm, stolen from Father's desk just hours ago, and now it burned like a coal. "We shouldn't be doing this, Tom," Clara whispered, her voice barely cutting through the dust-choked air. She tugged at my sleeve, her fingers cold and insistent. "What if it's not just sickness? What if it's something worse?" I shushed her, though my own heart hammered a warning. Father had locked that door 5 years back, right after Mother birthed the angel child. That's what the whispers in town called it, a frail thing with skin like porcelain and eyes that never opened. We'd been told it was a blessing, a miracle in our barren Dakota claim, but the screams that first night, they still haunted my dreams. Elias, our eldest, had sworn us to silence, but curiosity festered like an untreated wound. The stairs loomed ahead, narrow and slick with shadow. I led the way, the lantern casting jagged pools of light that danced like specters. Each step protested, wood splintering faintly underfoot, and I wondered if the house itself was trying to keep us out. Clara followed close, her breath ragged, while Elias brought up the rear, his shotgun slung over one shoulder. Not loaded, but the weight of it made him feel like the man of the house he pretended to be. At the landing, the air thickened, carrying a faint, sickly sweet scent, like overripe fruit mixed with something metallic. The door waited at the end of the hall, its oak frame scarred from years of neglect, the lock gleaming dully in the lantern's glow. I fumbled the key into place, my hands slick with sweat. It turned with a reluctant click, louder than a gunshot in the stillness. Elias pushed past me, his jaw set. In and out. We see what's there, then we seal it again. No heroics. The door swung open on hinges that wailed, revealing a room shrouded in gloom. Dust motes swirled in the intrusion of light, settling on furniture draped in faded linens. A crib, a rocking chair, shelves lined with jars that caught the flame like eyes watching back. And in the center, on a low cot, lay the shape we'd come for. Clara gasped, clutching my arm. The angel child wasn't the infant we'd imagined frozen in time. It was a girl now, maybe 10, curled beneath a threadbare quilt, her hair a tangled halo of white. Her chest rose and fell in shallow rhythms, but those eyes, milky and unseeing, stared straight ahead, as if she'd been waiting for us all along. I stepped closer, the floor cold beneath my boots, my mind racing with questions I dared not voice. Why had Father lied? What curse had he hidden here, in this forgotten corner of the prairie? Elias knelt beside her, his tough facade cracking as he reached out a trembling hand. "Hey, little one," he murmured, voice thick. "We're here now." She stirred then, a soft whimper escaping her lips, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind howled across the endless Dakota flats, rattling the windows like bones in a grave. We'd opened the door, but I knew deep in my gut that closing it again wouldn't be so simple. The angel's fingers twitched toward Elias, and in that moment, I felt the weight of our family's secrets pressing down, threatening to bury us all. The floorboards creaked under my boots as I pressed my ear to the locked door, the wood cool and splintered against my skin. Inside, the whispers had turned to soft, rhythmic humming, a tune I half remembered from Mother's lullabies, but twisted, like wind through a cracked pane. Pa had sworn us to silence about the room since Eliza's birth, but tonight, with the blizzard howling outside our sod house, I couldn't shake the itch in my chest. My sister Clara, always the bold one, tugged at my sleeve from the shadows of the hallway. "Elias, you hear that? It's her. She's awake." I nodded, my breath fogging in the lantern's dim glow. Clara's eyes, wide and fierce, mirrored the storm's fury. At 16, she was all fire where I was caution wrapped in wool. We'd lost Ma to fever 2 winters back, and Pa's grief had sealed that door tighter than a grave. But the angel child, as he called Eliza, wasn't like us, pale as milkweed silk with eyes that caught the light wrong, and limbs that didn't bend right. The townfolk whispered of curses when they saw our farm from the road, but Pa said she was God's own, hidden from prying eyes. Tonight, though, the humming pulled at me like a hook. "Pa's out checking the livestock," Clara murmured, her voice a thread in the gale rattling the shutters. "If we don't look now, we never will." Her hand slipped a skeleton key from her apron, stolen from Pa's tool shed, no doubt. My heart hammered as she worked it into the lock, the tumblers clicking like dry bones. I wanted to pull back, to remember Pa's tales of the devil's bargains in these plains. But the door gave way with a sigh, swinging inward on rusted hinges. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light we let spill across the threshold. The room was a forgotten corner of our world. A narrow cot piled with threadbare quilts, a basin crusted with old water, and shelves bowed under jars of herbs and tonics Ma had mixed before she faded. There in the corner, Eliza sat cross-legged on the floor, her white dress pooling like spilled cream. She didn't look up at first, her fingers tracing patterns in the dirt, swirls that might have been wings or maps to nowhere. Up close, she was smaller than I recalled from the glimpses Pa allowed. Her skin almost translucent, veins threading blue beneath. But her humming stopped, and those eyes, milky, unblinking, fixed on us. "Elias," she breathed, her voice a rasp like autumn leaves. It wasn't a question. She knew me somehow through the walls. Clara gasped, dropping the lantern just enough to shadow her face, but I stepped forward, knees protesting the cold. "Eliza, it's me. And Clara." The words felt foolish, spilling out in the stale air, but she tilted her head, a smile cracking her lips. Too wide, too knowing. "They come in the snow," she said, pointing a twisted finger toward the frosted window. Outside, the blizzard clawed at the glass, but I saw nothing but white. Clara knelt beside her, brave as ever, touching Eliza's hand. It was warm, unnaturally so, like a coal wrapped in silk. "Who, sister?" "Tell us." Eliza's gaze drifted to me, and for a heartbeat I felt it, a pull like the earth tilting under my feet. "The Watchers. Pa locked me here to keep them out, but the storm calls them closer." Her words hung simple and sure, no child's babble. I swallowed, mind racing to Pa's Bible stories of angels and falls, but this felt rawer, tied to the land's old hungers. Clara's face hardened. She wasn't one for ghosts, but the fear in Eliza's eyes mirrored our own gnawing doubts. We couldn't stay long. The wind's howl grew insistent, and Pa's boots might crunch back any minute. But as I helped Eliza to her feet, her weight light as thistledown, a shadow flickered beyond the window. Not snow. A shape tall and indistinct pressing against the glass like ink bleeding through paper. My blood turned to ice. "Clara, get the door," I whispered, but she was already moving, key in hand. Eliza clung to my arm, her hum starting again, softer now. A ward or a welcome, I couldn't tell. We slipped back into the hall just as the front door banged open downstairs, Pa's voice cursing the cold. The lock clicked shut behind us, sealing the secret tighter, but the shape lingered in my mind's eye, waiting for the storm to break. I gripped the rusted key so tight my knuckles ached, the metal biting into my palm like a promise of secrets long buried. The door to the attic loomed before me, its wood warped from decades of prairie winds, but it was the lock that held me. The same one Pa had hammered into place back when I was just a boy, whispering about the angel we weren't supposed to speak of. Ellie tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide in the lantern's flicker, but I shook her off. "Stay back," I muttered, voice rough as gravel. We'd come this far, sneaking past Ma's watchful gaze after supper, driven by the whispers in town about the Ashfields and their hidden shame. The key turned with a groan that echoed through the empty house, and as the door creaked open, a chill seeped out, carrying the faint scent of lavender and something sharper, like old blood. Inside, the air hung heavy, dust motes dancing in the beam of light like restless spirits. I held the lantern high, revealing shelves lined with forgotten trunks and yellowed linens, but my eyes locked on the far corner where a heavy curtain draped a narrow alcove. Ellie's breath hitched behind me, her hand finding mine despite my warning. "Elias, what if it's true?" she whispered, her voice trembling but laced with that stubborn curiosity that had always made her braver than me. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward, boots thudding softly on the creaking boards. The curtain was tied with frayed ribbons, once white but now stained with time. My heart pounded as I reached for it, fingers brushing the fabric, cold, unnaturally so, and pulled it aside. There, in a cradle carved from pale oak, lay the shape we'd both dreaded and chased through sleepless nights. It wasn't a child, not in the way the Bible promised, but something twisted, its skin translucent like thin parchment stretched over fragile bones. The angel child, they called it in hushed tones at church, the one born to the Ashfields in '82, hidden away because no midwife would touch it, no preacher would bless it. Its chest rose and fell in shallow rhythms, eyes, milky and unseeing, fluttering beneath lids veined with blue. I froze, bile rising in my throat as a soft hum emanated from its throat. Not a cry, but a melody, eerie and pulling, like wind through cracked glass. Ellie gasped, pressing closer, but I shoved her back gently. "Don't," I hissed, though part of me wanted to flee too. The stories said it was a curse, a punishment for Pa's dealings with the Sioux medicine man during the harsh winter, trading whiskey for charms that promised bountiful crops, but delivered this instead. Ma had locked it away, feeding it scraps through the door, her face gaunt from the secret's weight. Now, with Pa gone to the gold fields and never returned, the burden fell to us, or so the town gossips insisted, urging us to end it proper before the devil claimed the whole farm. The thing stirred, its tiny hand twitching toward the light, fingers elongated and claw-like yet delicate as a bird's wing. I knelt, compelled against my will, and the hum grew louder, weaving into my thoughts. Images flashing of endless prairies burning, of faces I didn't know screaming in the night. "Elias!" Ellie's voice cut through, sharp and grounding. She grabbed my arm, yanking me upright. "We can't just stare. If we're doing this, we do it now." Her words were fierce, but her eyes betrayed the fear, the same doubt gnawing at me. The plan had been simple. Uncover the truth, maybe find proof to sell the land and escape Dakota's grip. But truth like this? It clawed deeper than any plow. I nodded, swallowing hard, and reached into my pocket for the knife. Pa's old hunting blade, dull but sure. The angel's hum faltered as if sensing the intent, and for a heartbeat, the room seemed to hold its breath. Ellie turned away, whispering a prayer under her breath, while I raised the blade, the weight of family legacy pressing down like the sod house's roof in a storm. But as the edge hovered, a knock echoed from below, sharp, insistent, shattering the moment. Voices drifted up, men's tones, rough with authority. The sheriff, or worse, the vigilantes from town, come to claim their justice. We scrambled, shoving the curtain back into place, the key jamming in the lock as hurried footsteps creaked on the stairs. My mind raced, hide it again or face them with the blade still warm in my hand. The hum resumed, softer now, almost pleading. And I wondered if mercy lay in the shadows or in the light we just unleashed. Ellie met my gaze, her jaw set. "Together," she said, and we slipped toward the window, hearts thundering, the attic's secrets clinging to us like dust. The door to the attic loomed before me, its wood warped from years of Dakota winds seeping through the cracks, and I could hear it now. That faint, rhythmic scratching from the other side, like nails on dry earth. Pa had sworn me to silence about Eliza, our angel child, the one born too quiet, too still, with eyes that gleamed like polished riverstones even in the dark. But tonight, with Ma's fever raging downstairs and the sheriff's questions echoing in my ears from his visit yesterday, I couldn't wait any longer. I turned the key, the lock giving way with a groan that matched the storm building outside. The hinges screamed as I pushed the door open, a sliver of moonlight slicing through the gloom like a blade. Dust motes danced in the beam, and there she was, Eliza, huddled in the corner on a pallet of straw, her white dress hanging off her like a shroud. She didn't look up at first, just kept tracing patterns in the floorboards with her finger. Patterns I'd seen in my dreams, spirals that twisted inward, pulling everything toward the center. "Ben," she whispered, her voice a rasp that clawed at my chest. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me, the air thick with the scent of mildew and something sweeter, like overripe fruit. My heart pounded. Pa would skin me alive if he knew, but the sheriff's words burned hotter. "Folks saying strange things about your family, boy. Lights in the attic at night. Cries like a babe lost in the snow." I knelt beside her, keeping my distance. Always the distance, that's what Ma taught us. Eliza's skin was cool to the touch when I dared brush her arm, cooler than any living thing should be, and her eyes finally met mine, wide and unblinking. "They're coming," she said, not a question, just a fact hanging in the air. I swallowed hard, thinking of the neighbors' whispers, the way old Mr. Harlan had stared at our farm from the ridge yesterday, his shotgun slung over his shoulder like an accusation. The challenge wasn't just the locked door anymore. It was the town closing in, their suspicion a noose tightening around us all. "Who, Eliza? The sheriff?" She shook her head, her curls matted and wild. "The ones who want to take me away, like before." Her words sent a chill racing down my spine, sharper than the draft whistling through the eaves. I remembered the stories Pa told in hushed tones by the fire, how Eliza had come during the blizzard of '89, silent as the grave, and how the traveling preacher had called her a blessing, then fled in the night after seeing her smile. We'd kept her hidden since, feeding her scraps through the door, telling the world she died young. But now, with Ma delirious and muttering about the angel's hunger, I wondered if the real hazard was inside these walls, not out. Eliza reached out, her fingers curling around my wrist, and for the first time, I felt a warmth pulsing from her, faint but insistent like a heartbeat buried deep. "Help me, Ben, or they'll lock us all away." I pulled back, my mind racing through plans that crumbled one after another. Sneak her out under cover of night, The snowdrifts were thigh-deep, and Pa's hounds would bay at any stranger's scent. Tell the truth to the sheriff? He'd drag us to the asylum in Pierre, label us freaks or worse. The scratching started again. Not from Eliza this time, but from the far wall, where the boards met the stone foundation. A low, insistent scrape that built into a rhythm, matching the thunder rolling across the plains. Eliza's eyes darted toward it, fear flickering there for the first time I'd ever seen. It's waking, she breathed, and I froze, the key still clutched in my fist like a lifeline. We sat there in the dim light, the storm lashing the roof like fists on a drum, and I realized the early plan I'd clung to, confront Pa at dawn, demand answers, had backfired before it even began. He'd caught me sneaking bread up here last week, his belt leaving welts that still stung, and sworn it'd be the end of me if I pried further. But now, with Eliza trembling beside me, her small hand in mine, I saw no choice but adaptation. We'll dig, I said, voice steady despite the quake in my gut. Through the back wall into the root cellar. No one'll see. She nodded, a spark of something fierce lighting her gaze, and together we pried at the loose board with my knife, splinters flying like accusations. Hours blurred as we worked, the storm masking our efforts, but each scrape revealed not earth but a hollow space lined with strange markings, symbols etched deep, glowing faintly under my lantern's flicker. Eliza traced one with her finger, and the air hummed, a vibration that settled in my bones. This is where it started, she murmured. The angel's cradle. My arms burned, sweat stinging my eyes, but we pushed on, the hole widening inch by agonizing inch. Outside, voices carried on the wind, Pa shouting at shadows in the yard, perhaps, or worse, the neighbors come calling uninvited. The stakes sharpened with every breath. If we failed, it wasn't just freedom at risk, but the unraveling of everything we'd hidden. As dawn crept in, gray and unforgiving, we broke through. Cool air rushed from the gap, carrying the earthy tang of the cellar below, and Eliza slipped through first, her form vanishing into the dark like a... The wind howled through the cracks in the barn walls like a living thing, carrying the sharp scent of impending snow that bit at my exposed skin. I gripped the lantern tighter, its flame flickering against the shadows that seemed to stretch longer with every step Elias and I took toward the back corner. We'd come out here after supper, away from Ma's watchful eyes and the creak of the floorboards in the house, because Elias swore he'd heard it again, that soft, otherworldly hum from the locked room seeping into the night. It's calling for us, Caleb, he'd whispered earlier, his voice steady but his eyes wild with that mix of fear and fire I knew too well from our Pa before the fever took him. Elias led the way, his boots crunching over the hay-strewn floor, shoulders hunched against the cold. He was the brave one, always had been. The brother who'd charge a coyote bare-handed if it meant protecting what was ours. Me? I was the cautious sort, the one tallying risks like beads on a rosary. But tonight caution felt like a chain holding me back. The Ashfield land had always been harsh, Dakota's endless plains that swallowed men whole. But this winter promised worse. The cattle were thinning, the well running dry from some underground shift we couldn't explain, and now this. Whatever lingered in that room upstairs, the one Pa had boarded shut before he died, calling it our angel child in his delirium. We reached the ladder to the hayloft where the trapdoor to the house's upper level hid behind a false panel. Elias climbed first, his calloused hands sure on the rungs, and I followed, the lantern swinging like a pendulum in my grasp. The air grew thicker up there, heavy with dust and something sweeter, like wildflowers pressed too long between Bible pages. You think it's real? I asked, my voice barely cutting the silence as I hauled myself up beside him. He shot me a look, half grin, half scowl, real enough to keep Ma up nights staring at nothing, and if it's hurtin', we can't just leave it. Elias wasn't one for poetry, but his words carried weight, born from years of watching Pa pace the porch, muttering about blessings disguised as curses. The family secret had started with Pa finding something or someone in the storm of '88, a tiny bundle swaddled in rags, pale as moonlight with eyes like shattered glass. He'd hidden it away, called it an angel sent to test our faith, but the whispers in town had grown. Devil's spawn, they said, after the crops failed, and little Timmy from the neighboring farm went missing. Pushing the panel aside, we slipped into the narrow hallway, the lantern's glow picking out the splintered boards nailed across the door at the end. The hum was louder now, a low vibration that thrummed in my chest, urging me closer even as my gut twisted. Elias pressed his ear to the wood, then stepped back, jaw set. Plan's simple, pry it open quiet-like, see what's inside, and if it's like Pa said, we figure how to help it without bringing the whole territory down on us. I nodded, though doubt clawed at me. We'd tried talking to Ma earlier that day, cornering her by the stove as she stirred the thin stew. It's just the wind, she'd insisted, her hands trembling on the ladle, but her eyes darted to the ceiling like it might cave in. She'd changed since Pa's death, harder, more withdrawn, locking herself in prayer more than with us. Elias had argued, his voice rising. Ma, if it's family, we face it together. But she'd shoot us out, and now here we were, breaking what little trust remained. He wedged the crowbar we'd smuggled from the shed under the boards, muscles straining as he levered the first nail free with a groan of wood. Splinters rained down, catching the light like brittle stars. My heart pounded, each creak echoing like a warning. What if it wasn't an angel? What if the stories were true? And opening that door unleashed something that explained the blizzards that buried our fences, the shadows that moved in the corners of our vision. Elias paused, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. You backing out, little brother? Never, I lied, stepping up to help. Together we worked the bar, the hum swelling into a melody that tugged at memories I didn't own. Flashes of wings in the snow, a child's laughter echoing over the plains. The second board gave way, then the third, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. Cold air rushed out carrying that floral scent, and for a moment I swore I saw a hand, small, luminous, reaching from the gloom. But then the floorboards in the hall below creaked. Footsteps. Ma's voice cut through the night, sharp as a whip. Boys, what in God's name are you doing up there? Elias froze, the crowbar slipping from his grip with a clatter that seemed to shake the house. We exchanged a glance, the weight of our choice crashing down, the door half open, the secret stirring, and now the risk of losing everything if she saw. The hum pulsed once, inviting, and I wondered if we'd just doomed us all. I gripped the rusted key in my sweating palm, the metal biting into my skin as I stared at the door. It had been 3 days since Elias vanished into the storm, and now here I was, back at the Ashfield homestead. The wind howling like the devil himself was loose on the plains. My boots crunched on the frost-cracked porch, each step echoing my pounding heart. Elias had sworn the angel child wasn't a myth, and after what I'd seen in the barn, I couldn't dismiss it anymore. Inside, the air hung thick with the scent of damp wool and something sharper, like old blood mixed with lye soap. Mrs. Ashfield, Lillian, though she'd never invited the familiarity, stood by the hearth, her hands twisting a frayed apron. Her eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, flicked to me without warmth. You shouldn't have come back, Mr. Harrow. Pa's gone to town for the doc, but he won't abide snooping. I didn't answer right away. My mind raced back to Elias's frantic note crumpled in my coat pocket. The room upstairs. It's not locked from the outside anymore. God help us. He'd been my partner in surveying these Dakota claims, tough as leather and twice as stubborn. But fear had stripped that away. Whatever he'd found here had sent him running, or worse. I forced my voice steady. Where's the key to the upper landing? Elias said it was urgent. She laughed, a brittle sound that cracked like thin ice. Elias? That fool boy poked where he oughtn't. The child's our burden, not yours. But her gaze darted to the narrow stairs, shadowed and steep, leading to the attic where rumors whispered of screams muffled by feather beds. I stepped forward, the floorboards groaning under me, and she blocked the way, her frail frame suddenly unyielding. Brave woman, Lillian Ashfield, cautious to a fault, yet fierce when cornered. We grappled then, not with fists but wills, her pushing against my chest while I held the key aloft like a talisman. Let me pass, I growled, my breath hot in the chill room. If it's a sickness up there, the doc'll need to know. Elias might be dying because of it. Lies came easy under pressure. Truth was, I half believed the old tales now. The pale figure Elias had sketched, all limbs too long and eyes like polished glass. She relented with a shove, stepping aside, but her whisper followed me up the stairs. It's no sickness. It's a gift. Or a curse. Pa locked it away to keep the world safe. The steps creaked louder with each rise, my lantern casting jittery shadows that danced like imps. At the landing, a plain oak door loomed, its lock scarred from hasty turns. I fitted the key, the tumblers clicking like bones settling. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a room barren as a monk's cell. A single cot, a basin of murky water, and walls papered in faded florals. peeling at the edges. No child, but the air hummed thick and electric, raising the hairs on my neck. Footprints, small, bare, trailed to a loose floorboard in the corner. I knelt, prying it up with trembling fingers, and beneath lay a bundle of yellowed letters tied with twine. The first one unfolded in my hands. "Dearest William, the babe came wrong, but the preacher says it's heaven touched. We must hide it lest the townfolks take it for a demon. Lillian's handwriting, dated 89. My gut twisted. 3 years they'd kept this secret. The angel child, not some ethereal wonder, but a fragile thing, perhaps malformed, starved of light and air. Elias must have freed it or tried to. And now it was loose in the house. A soft scrape echoed from the closet at the room's far end. I froze, lantern raised, heart slamming against my ribs. The door creaked open on its own, and there, crouched in the gloom, was the child, or what was left of it. Skin like porcelain cracked by frost. Eyes wide and unblinking, reflecting the flame back at me. It didn't cry out. It just watched. A small hand extended, fingers curled like it was reaching for salvation. I backed away, the letters scattering, but the thing uncoiled with unnatural grace, whispering in a voice like wind through reeds. "Papa. Help." Not Elias's voice, but something older, borrowed. Lillian's scream tore from below, and I knew then, the cost wasn't just the child's hiding. It was the family's soul, fraying thread by thread. Down the stairs I bolted, the child's pursuit a patter of bare feet behind, light as rain. Lillian met me at the bottom, a shotgun leveled in shaking hands. "Shoot it," she pleaded, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. But I knocked the barrel aside. Killing wouldn't end this. It had only deepened the grave they'd dug. We barricaded the kitchen door together, chairs and a table shoved against it while the whispers seeped through the wood. Elias's note had been right. The lock was broken, and so were we all. Outside, the Dakota night pressed in, vast and unforgiving as the first real snow of winter began to fall. The floorboards creaked under my boots as I edged closer to the locked door, the lantern's flame flickering like it knew what waited beyond. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill seeping through the cabin walls, and I could hear Pa's ragged breathing behind me. Too loud, too close, like he was holding back a scream. "Elias, you sure about this?" he whispered, his voice cracking on the edges. I nodded, though my gut twisted. We'd come this far, prying open secrets the Ashfields had buried for years, and turning back now meant letting that thing, whatever they called their angel, claim another soul. I jammed the crowbar into the doorframe again, wood splintering with a sharp crack that echoed down the hallway. The lock held, rusted but stubborn, and for a moment I thought of Ma, how she'd begged us not to dig into the old tales before the fever took her. But the whispers in town had grown too loud. Children vanishing near the Ashfield homestead, shadows moving where none should. We'd found the journal first, hidden in the attic. Pages filled with frantic scrawls about a birth gone wrong in '89. A child not quite human, locked away to protect the light. Pa had scoffed at first, called it prairie madness, but then the dreams started, the same ones pulling me upright at night. Pale eyes watching from the dark. The door groaned open an inch, then stuck, a draft rushing out like a held breath released. It carried a scent, sweet, cloying, like overripe fruit mixed with something metallic. My hand trembled on the crowbar. I wasn't the brave type. Not like the stories Pa told around the fire, but curiosity had hooked me deep, and now it reeled me in. "Together," I muttered, and Pa leaned in, his shoulder bumping mine. We heaved, and the door swung wide, hinges wailing. Inside, the room was a tomb of faded lace and dust-choked toys, moonlight slanting through a cracked window to paint everything silver. In the center, on a narrow bed draped in yellowed linen, sat the figure. Not a child, not anymore. Taller than I expected, skin translucent as onion paper, veins threading blue beneath. It turned its head slowly, eyes wide and unblinking, luminous in the dim light. "Brother?" it said, voice soft as wind through reeds, but laced with something hungry. Pa froze beside me, his lantern dropping from numb fingers, the flame guttering low. I stepped forward, heart pounding against my ribs because running felt like surrender, and we'd lost too much already to ghosts and lies. The angel tilted its head, a smile cracking its lips. Too many teeth, too sharp. "You've come to free me," it murmured, extending a hand that ended in fingers long and claw-like. I glanced back at Pa, his face ashen, and saw the fear mirrored in his eyes. But there was resolve too, the kind forged in long Dakota winters. "Not free," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "Just answers." It laughed then, a sound like breaking glass, and the shadows in the room seemed to thicken, coiling around the bedposts. Pa snatched up the lantern, holding it high, and in its glow I saw the walls, scratched with symbols, pleas etched in what might have been blood. The Ashfields hadn't locked it away for protection. They'd done it to contain the hunger, the way it fed on fear, on isolation. My mind raced, piecing together the journal's warnings. It grew stronger in the dark, weaker in the light of truth. "Pa, the windows," I said, lunging for the nearest one. Glass shattered under my elbow, dawn's first gray light spilling in like a promise. The thing hissed, recoiling, its form shimmering as if the air itself rejected it. But it wasn't done. Tendrils of shadow lashed out, wrapping around my ankle, cold as grave soil. I kicked free, grabbing a splintered chair leg as a makeshift club. Pa was at my side, swinging the lantern like a flail, the flame leaping wild. "Elias, the salt," he shouted, remembering the old remedy from the journal. I fumbled in my pocket, the coarse grains spilling as I hurled them across the threshold. They sizzled where they landed, and the creature shrieked, curling inward. We backed toward the door, breaths coming in gasps, but it pursued, inching forward on twisted limbs. Outside, the homestead stirred. Neighbors we'd roused earlier, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies in the pre-dawn. "It's real!" I yelled through the open door, and voices rose in response, footsteps thundering closer. The angel paused, its eyes darting to the growing light, the circle of faces peering in. For the first time it looked small, cornered, not a monster but a mistake, a family's desperate sin laid bare. As the sun crested the horizon, burning away the shadows, it withered, collapsing into a heap of brittle skin and fading whispers. Pa slumped against the wall, wiping his brow, and I felt the weight settle. Not triumph exactly, but relief laced with sorrow. The Ashfields were gone, scattered or dead, but their secret had poisoned the land. We'd burn the cabin, salt the earth, but the scars would linger. A reminder that some angels were born from hell's own cradle. And as the crowd murmured prayers, I wondered if we'd truly ended it or just passed the lock to someone else. The wind howled like a banshee through the cracks in the sod walls, carrying the bite of another Dakota winter squall. I gripped the lantern tighter, its flame flickering against the shadows that danced across Elias's face. My brother looked gaunt, his eyes hollowed by days without proper sleep, but there was a fire in them now. Defiant, the kind that had gotten us this far on the claim. "We can't wait any longer, Ma," he whispered, his voice rough from the cold. The locks rusted through. One good shove and we're in. I nodded, though my heart hammered like a locomotive. The locked room at the end of the hall had been Father's sanctum since we settled this patch of prairie 3 years back. A heavy oak door barred with iron that no one entered without his say-so. But Father was gone now, taken by the fever last harvest, and with him went the secrets. Whispers from the neighbors in Ashfield had turned to outright stares, talk of our angel child, a blessing or curse hidden away, fueling rumors that could cost us the homestead if the sheriff came calling. We'd scavenged what we could from the root cellar, but the blizzards had trapped us, supplies dwindling to cornmeal and salted pork. Elias thought the room held more, canned goods, maybe tools, or Father's hidden gold to buy our way out of this forsaken winter. Ma hovered behind us, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, fingers twisting the locket at her throat. She was the cautious one, always had been, patching quilts from feed sacks while Father chased dreams of sod-breaking glory. "What if it's not provisions in there?" she murmured, her voice trembling but steady. "What if it's, the angel child?" Father had called her that in his fevered ramblings, a fragile thing we'd never seen, born too early or touched by some prairie spirit. Ma had enforced the lock after he passed, saying it protected us all. But starvation didn't care for protections. Elias shot her a glance, witty even in desperation. "Then we feed her the rumors and see if she grows wings to fly us to town." He pressed his shoulder against the door, testing. The wood groaned but held, the bar inside unyielding. I stepped forward, my boots scuffing the packed dirt floor, and wedged the crowbar we'd fashioned from an old plowshare into the seam. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill. One wrong move, and the whole house might collapse inward, burying whatever truth lay beyond. With a grunt, Elias joined me, our muscles straining in unison. The bar gave way with a metallic screech that echoed like a gunshot, the door swinging open on protesting hinges. Dust motes swirled in the lantern light, revealing shelves lined not with food, but jars of strange preserves, amber liquid swirling with what looked like feathers or tiny bones, and a cradle in the corner, draped in faded lace. No child, no angel, just emptiness that smelled of old lavender and regret. Ma gasped, pushing past us. "Oh, God," she breathed, kneeling by the cradle. Inside lay a bundle of yellowed letters tied with twine, and a small porcelain doll with glass eyes that seemed to follow our movements. Elias snatched a letter, his hands shaking as he scanned the faded ink. "It's from back east," he said, voice dropping. "Father's sister. She sent money, but he locked it away. Said the angel was our future, not hers." The words blurred before me. The real cost hit then. The isolation we'd endured, neighbors shunning us over myths while salvation rotted behind this door. But the wind shifted, rattling the shutters, and a distant rumble grew. Not thunder, but hooves. Riders cutting through the storm. Our plan to slip into town at dawn shattered. They'd come early, drawn by the smoke from our chimney or the gossip that festered like gangrene. Ma clutched the doll to her chest, tears carving paths down her weathered cheeks. "We face them together," she said, resolve hardening her features. "No more hiding." Elias nodded, tucking the letters into his coat. I blew out the lantern, plunging us into twilight gloom as the first knocks pounded on the front door. Lawmen or busybodies, it didn't matter. The angel's secret wasn't a child at all, but the lie we'd all lived, and now it would either save us or doom the Ashfields to the prairie winds forever. I gripped the rusted key tighter, my knuckles white against the cold metal as the door to the locked room creaked open inch by inch. Dust swirled like ghosts in the lantern's flicker, and there she was, Ilara, our angel child, not the ethereal vision Ma had painted, but a frail girl of maybe 12, chained to the bed frame with irons that bit into her wrists, her eyes wide and fever bright locked onto mine, and in that moment, I knew we'd been lied to our whole lives. "Pa, is that you?" Her voice was a rasp, barely cutting through the stale air heavy with mildew and something sharper like old blood. She tugged at the chains, the links rattling like bones, but didn't cry out. Brave, like I'd always imagined, though the stories had twisted her into something holy, untouchable. I knelt beside her, heart pounding against my ribs, fumbling with the key. "It's me, Ilara. Elias. Your brother." The words stuck in my throat. 20 years I'd waited for this, piecing together whispers from the attic, Ma's fevered prayers, Pa's locked study. But now, with her skin pale as the prairie snow outside, marked with bruises that bloomed like wild roses, the truth clawed at me. This wasn't salvation. It was a cage we'd built ourselves. The key turned in the lock with a groan, freeing one wrist. She rubbed it absently, her gaze darting to the shadows beyond the door. "They're coming back," Ma said. She said I'm the devil's seed, that the angels locked me here to keep the farm safe. Her words tumbled out, laced with the same Dakota drawl as mine, but fractured, like wind through cracked boards. I froze, the second chain half undone. Devil's seed? Ma's Bible thumping had always skirted the edges of madness, but this, lies all of it. "We're getting you out. The sheriff's waiting downstairs with Tommy. He's got the wagon ready." Tommy, my cousin, the cautious one who'd argued against breaking in all night. But here he was, loyal as the day we'd buried little sister Sarah. A floorboard creaked in the hall, sharp and deliberate. My pulse thundered. Pa's heavy boots? Or worse, the neighbors who'd turned a blind eye for years, whispering about the Ashfields and their cursed luck, crops failing, fevers claiming kin one by one. I yanked the last chain free, hauling Ilara to her feet. She wobbled, light as a bird's bone, her nightgown torn and filthy. We slipped toward the door, my arm around her waist, every step a prayer against the groaning house. The lantern swung, casting our shadows long and twisted on the wallpaper, peeling like old skin. Down the stairs, past the parlor where Ma's portrait hung crooked, her eyes following us, accusing, always accusing. But as we reached the back door, it burst open, and Pa stood there, shotgun leveled, his face a mask of weathered fury under the brim of his hat. "Elias, boy, you don't know what you're unleashing." Rain lashed in behind him, soaking the threshold, turning the floor slick. Ilara shrank against me, but I stepped forward, chin up. "It's over, Pa, she's coming with us." The words felt like lead, but they were mine, forged in the fire of seeing her chains. He lowered the barrel a fraction, eyes flicking to her. "Angel or demon, she's kept us alive. The droughts, the blizzards, they spared us because of her. His voice cracked, not with anger, but something broken, like the land after 88's big freeze. Tommy burst from the side hall then, fists clenched, the sheriff's badge glinting on his chest. "Drop it, Uncle Ash, this ends tonight." The standoff hung, taut as a bowstring, the storm howling its approval outside. I met Pa's gaze, searching for the man who'd taught me to plow straight rows. "If she's the devil, Pa, then so are we for locking her away." Ilara's hand tightened in mine, small but steady, and in that grip, I felt the first crack in the family's rotten foundation. The shotgun clattered to the floor. Pa sagged against the doorframe, rain mixing with tears on his cheeks. We moved past him, into the night, the wagon waiting like a promise under the churning sky. But as we rattled away from the farmhouse, Ilara's whisper cut through the wind. "What if he's right? What if I bring the curse?" I pulled her close, the miles stretching ahead toward Rapid City, where a doctor waited and maybe, just maybe, a new start. "Then we'll face it together. No more locks." The words were a vow, but doubt lingered like the echo of those chains, a shadow we'd carry into the dawn. I gripped the rusted key in my palm, its edges biting into my skin like a promise finally kept. The door to the locked room creaked open under my push, and there she was, our Eliza. Not the fragile angel we'd whispered about in the dead of night, but a girl of 13 with fire in her eyes and dirt smudged across her cheeks from whatever she'd been scratching into the walls. The air inside hung thick with the scent of damp earth and old books. The single lantern's flicker casting shadows that danced like forgotten secrets. "Mama, Pa?" Her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the strain of holding back tears. She stood taller than I remembered, her once pale arms now corded with muscle from hauling herself up the crude rope ladder we'd hidden in the floorboards. The room wasn't the prison we'd built it to be. It was her fortress lined with sketches of machines and diagrams pilfered from my late brother's engineering texts. Gears and levers sketched in charcoal sprawled across the floor, her inventions born from isolation. I stepped inside, my boots thudding softly on the warped planks. Clara followed, her hand trembling in mine, the weight of our deception pressing down like the prairie storms we'd weathered. We'd locked her away after the fever, convinced the town whispers of cursed blood would tear us apart. The Ashfields, they said, harbored something unholy, but Eliza wasn't cursed. She was brilliant, her mind a whirlwind we'd caged out of fear. "Eliza, honey," Clara whispered, kneeling to pull her into an embrace. The girl stiffened at first, then melted, her small frame shaking. I scanned the room, heart pounding. The challenge we'd faced, the sheriff's men circling our homestead demanding to see the angel child after Old Man Hargrove's tales spread like wildfire, had forced this moment. Our plan to flee north had backfired when the wagon axle snapped in the mud, stranding us. Teamwork, that's what got us here. Me distracting the posse with a feigned collapse. Clara slipping the key from the hidden drawer, and Eliza, God bless her, rigging a false wall from scavenged barnwood to buy us time. But the cost lingered. The homestead was lost. Flames from an accidental lantern spill had seen to that, courtesy of my quick hands and a prayer. We'd ride out at dawn, 3 shadows blending into the endless Dakota plains, no more locked rooms, no more lies. Eliza pulled back, her gaze sharp. "I heard them coming, Pa. Built this." She gestured to a contraption of wire and pulleys, a makeshift alarm that jingled faintly now, silenced. Clever girl, her adaptation, not ours. We gathered what we could, a satchel of her drawings, the family Bible scarred from the fire, and the locket with her infant picture, untainted. As we slipped out into the chill night, the locked room yawning empty behind us, I felt the grit in my throat, the earned triumph of survival, but the ache of what we'd stolen from her. Freedom tasted bittersweet like the first rain after drought, nourishing yet fleeting. The posse's lanterns bobbed distant on the horizon, but we were already ghosts, moving as one toward whatever horizon called next.